And we are live on Facebook for the Tuesday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. If you were with us a little bit before, we know that we're having a little bit of lag time, a little bit of technical difficulties. We're working through it. I'm still here. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez. We got with us Gregg Cohen. Say hello, Gregg.
Hello, everybody. Good to be here.
And today on the show, we were just talking about it. We have people that are the definition of the name of the show, Not Your Average Investor. We have Renee and we have Jen. Renee's joining us via video. I think he's going to hop off video in a second just to make sure that our stream is a little better, but we wanted you to see it. And we have Jen with us as well. Welcome, Renee and Jen.
Thank you.
After a little bit of technical difficulties on the intro and getting through that, we realized real quick things were going south. So I gave my explanation about going to JWB Web Class as the next step, jwbwebclass.com, where you get your free investor toolkit and you get this free class that shows you the benefits of real estate investing. Then we introduced Renee and Jen. They're this awesome couple that live in Monterey, California. They met at a dance class. They own a business together called Rockstar Marketing. And while they don't own their place in Monterey, California, they own multiple properties with JWB as investment properties. And Jen's family has subsequently also invested with JWB. But as you know, the technical difficulties got to us. At this point in the call, Gregg just said, hey guys, we're going to have you back. We're going to try and take it from here. And Gregg and I tried to just moderate a call telling their story. I hope you enjoy this.
It'd be an awesome time. Thank you, guys. This would be an awesome time for all of you to let me know what you want to learn. With that, I was thinking, Pablo, are you there?
I'm here, buddy. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So as long as you can hear me, I'm happy to help you along here. Gregg.
You know I need the help, brother. You know I need the help.
Gregg, the first thing I want to ask you is, right, like I know, and maybe we can preview a little bit of Jen's story, right?
Okay.
What makes it interesting, right? Like to me, something that's really interesting about Jen's, and my call dropped right as I was trying to just play moderator, knowing Jen's story, have a conversation with Gregg. But the coolest thing happened. Gregg, right before that, if you heard him, he was saying, hey, we still want to have value. We still want to help people out. So I'm going to need some help from the audience. I need some extra questions. And what happened was extraordinary. Everybody that was on the call, all 35, 40 of us that were there, immediately took to the chat and took to the question and answer box. And there was more comments and more Q&A than there's ever been on any call. So thank you. Anybody that was on this call is really special. You showed up for Gregg. And if you're watching or hearing it now, you're going to notice that there is Gregg just answering questions nonstop, because when he was hanging out on a limb, our friends of the Not Your Average Investor Show showed up to give him a hand. Enjoy this. I know that I did while I was watching it.
I think I'll take this one. I think I'll take this one solo. Just because it's really hard to hear. We get like 15 good words in, and then we get one really long word. So that's cool, buddy. I'm going to rock and roll. And I was thinking one of the things that I could teach everybody is how to choose the right market to invest. We can also talk about creative strategies to invest. This was really one of the key takeaways of the call, learning Jen and Renee's story, being out in California and how they chose to invest with JWB. So I can kind of share their story a little bit, and I'll share why they chose to invest in Jacksonville, Florida, rather than all the way in California, which is where they are. And with that, for everybody who has questions, Pablo's still going to be here, I believe, trying to work in the Q&A and the chat. Keep firing those questions in here. Help me help you so that we can make the best of our time here that we have together. So I'll share a little bit of the story of Jen and Renee. Just an incredible couple. As Jen was sharing, she runs her marketing firm. Renee used to work in the printing business. His true passion is drawing. He's an incredible artist, has incredible works of art, and of course the passion for the business on the marketing side, which he's joined for Jen and Renee. But when I was talking to Jen, early on, she said, Greg, she said, I want you to know that Renee and I, we are not like this couple that comes from a ton of money and we have tons and tons and piles of money to invest, right? They do very well, but they said we have to be very conscientious of where we put our dollars, and we have to make sure that our dollars go very far. And so when you're talking about somebody who's been creative as far as how they've built their portfolio, this is Jen and this is Renee. So I'll share some of the strategies that they've done, which might be different than what you may be doing as an investor. So how many investors out there, and that's right, and Jen says, yes, we are creatives who need to be creative with our money. That's exactly right, Jen. So how many of you out there, and if you would show me, you can send it in the chat, but how many of you out there have heard that it makes more sense to buy your primary residence before you buy your rental properties, right? Throw something in the chat if that's what you have thought or if that is what you believe, right? John says, yes, John, I met John this weekend. Good to see you, buddy. Good to see you on the show. Most people have this idea that they should be buying their primary before they buy their rental properties, right? Well, it's not a one-size-fits-all answer. And I'll show you an example here. Jen and Renee decided to buy rental properties before their primary residence, right? Medj Garcia says, yes, that's what she was thinking too, right? Well, here's where it's not a one-size-fits-all answer, right? If you're thinking about buying properties with your primary residence, you have to think about what the opportunity cost is of that decision, right? When you're in a market like California, in Monterey, I believe Jen and Renee are, in Monterey, California, and the median home sales price, I don't know how many millions it is, right? It is incredibly high out there. And Jen says, yes, they rent in Monterey. Well, they own 2 rental properties in Jacksonville. Why did they make the decision to buy rental properties while they continue to rent in Monterey? Well, if they were going to look at how they were going to make their financial goals work, right? How are they going to reach their financial goals? They looked at the money they could put down as a down payment on that property in Monterey that they may have purchased to live in. And they look at how far that money could go by using it to invest wisely, right? And when you rent in Monterey, it's lower. Like your rent that you're paying, and Jen, feel free to chime in here. The rent that you're paying is lower than what your mortgage payment would be if you were buying that property in Monterey, right? So your cash flow is, your outward cash flow if you're renting in Monterey is less than what you would pay if you had a mortgage payment, right? So they save money every single month that way. And then, oh, by the way, if they have all that big chunk of money for a down payment, and then they go and they use that to buy 2, 3, 4 rental properties in a low price market like Jacksonville, now they've built this income producing army. They've built this income producing group of assets that goes towards their long-term financial goals. So instead of dumping money, just doing it mindlessly, dumping money into a huge down payment, you're talking maybe a couple $100,000 of a down payment, maybe for a primary residence out in California, they use that money, right? That may turn into 4 or 5 rental properties to purchase in Jacksonville. And instead of being cash flow, like instead of not bringing any cash flow in California, they're now having, call it, with that $200,000, you could buy 4 or 5 properties that produce a couple $100, $250 a month in cash flow today, and they're poised to growth over the long haul. So one creative strategy right there that might help others who are on the call right now. Before you mindlessly think that you should be buying properties to live in before you invest in rental properties, take a moment, think about what the opportunity cost is. And Jen says, even if we saved $100,000 for a down payment here, that won't get us far with a tiny old home, right? So what she's saying is, instead of using that money, the opportunity cost, it would be a lot more than 100,000 she'd need to save. But the opportunity cost is great. It's great when you are investing, or when you're buying a primary residence in California. So that's one takeaway: to be creative. Think about whether or not the right move for you is to purchase your primary, or if it's to rent, and then start to use those assets to invest elsewhere. All right, a couple of other things that will help some of us who are looking for creative strategies to buy their first rental properties. This was a common question. Actually, I was playing spike ball this weekend. Pablo and I And a couple of our friends joined a spike ball tournament. And I actually met one of our listeners there, John. John was out there, and he asked me this question. He said, what are some things that I can do to buy my first rental property? Guess how old John is? He's 19 years old. How exciting is that, right? To be 19 years old and to be thinking of this. So very, very happy for where his mind is. And he says, I'm 19 years old. I don't have a lot of income, which is awesome. Nobody has income at 19 years old. He said, how did you buy your first rental property? So this will help, again, for those who are looking at creative strategies. I bought my first rental property when I was 23. And at 23, I really didn't have any money either. I'd been working for, a few months in the real world, didn't have much money, didn't have real estate experience. But what I realized is that, it's not that hard to get good enough credit to get a loan, right? So I looked at that and I said, well, if I have to come up with a way to buy this property and I can get financing for 80% of it, even if I don't have a lot of income, I didn't have any debt, right? I didn't have a lot of expenses either. So it wasn't hard for me to get finance to be able to buy that property. The way I looked at it is I said I was 80% of the way there. Now I just needed to figure out the other 20%, right? What you'll hear me say over and over and over again is that if you're thinking about buying rental properties, the raising of the money, putting the deal together is often the easiest part. It's all the other things that get in the way, but the raising of the money typically is the easiest part. So for me, what did I do? Well, I went and I looked in my cell phone and I said, who is somebody that's invested in my success, who potentially has some money that they're not happy with how it's performing, that might decide to partner up with me on my first property. And the first person I thought of was my dad. And so for you, right, it doesn't have to be your dad. It could be a friend. It could be a colleague at work. It could be another investor in town. It could be a family member. But I went to him and I said, hey, Dad, I had the numbers. And I said, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to get a loan from you for the down payment for this property, for the 20% down payment. I'll pay you back in 5 years with interest. I got the loan. So the financing was in my name. The property was in my name. I bought it at 23 years old. And then over time, I paid him back. And so for all of us out there who might not be in a position to have the money to put, $40,000 down on a down payment, but you have the ability to get financing, think of yourself as being 80% of the way there, right? You got to figure out the other 20%. But there's a whole lot of people out there, I'm sure, that are invested in your success, that want to see you succeed, that are interested in real estate. And oh, by the way, they aren't happy with how that $40,000 they had is performing in other investments. They might be willing to take a little bit of a chance with you because they're invested in your success. I see a question here from Lewis Hudnall. Thank you, Lewis, for the question. He said, regarding the deal with your dad, were you all co-owners of the property, or did he just give you a personal loan and you owned the property in your name? It's a great question. The answer to that is that I was the sole owner of the property, and he just gave me a loan. And so the property was in my name. We did it, call it off the books, right? Meaning like that wasn't a part of the process. Now, what actually has to happen is you can get a gift, or you can season the loan in your bank account for a period of months just to make sure that you pass all of the requirements to go ahead and get a loan. So you do have to have some proper planning ahead of time. And then when that happens, then the money comes from my bank account, and then it went towards the down payment for the property. And the property was owned by me when I purchased that property. And then I had an agreement with my dad that I was going to pay him back in 5 years. I think I paid him 5% interest with it. And then when I think it was the 5-year mark came across, I think that's when I paid him back. It's a long time ago. I can't remember exactly. I might've paid him back early. I don't know. But that was how I did the first property there. Bill Shields asked a question. Do you ever consider lease to own as an option to put more responsibility on the potential owner? He's thinking of the resident. So for anybody who's not familiar with what lease to own is, that's a way where you can rent your home to somebody, and they also basically have an option to purchase the property for you at a set dollar amount. Now, This, in theory, sounds pretty great if you are a short-term investor, a short-term buy and hold investor, right? So you basically get paid you get paid an option fee right off the bat. As the owner, you would maybe earn maybe $1,000, $2,000, maybe even $3,000 as an option fee. And then you would have the sales price already negotiated for that person to then buy from you, which would be your resident buying from you. So again, if you have a short-term rental strategy and you want to sell in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, this can be a good thing. Obviously, for those who are familiar with the show and familiar with me, I have a very long-term outlook. JWB in the Jacksonville market works really, really well for investors who have this long-term outlook. And when I say long-term outlook, I'd say a minimum of 5 years. And really what I want you to do is to hold on for 10 or more years. And the reason is because when you hold on for 10 or more years, home price appreciation no longer becomes speculative. You can count on it because over market cycles, home price appreciation rates tend to repeat themselves. So it's not something that I do. It's not something that we do for our residents, and it's not something that we do for our owners because it's not in line with our owners' goals and with our goals of holding long-term, right? You're not going to want to sign an option or a lease to own agreement for a 5-year or a 10-year hold. It just wouldn't make sense for either of you, either the resident or you. So we don't do it. And I can also just kind of share some personal experience with the lease to own thing. Many investors will say, well, it increases the likelihood that that person is going to take care of your home. When we first started doing this, like most things in real estate, we gave it a shot and we tried it. And what we found was that I think we did 6 or 7 lease options. Not one of those individuals did the things that they needed to do to qualify for the home. If you ask most investors out there who might do lease options, the chances of that resident actually getting qualified to buy your home from you is extremely small, just doesn't normally happen. And so we just and then it creates some challenges, right? You keep this option deposit from that resident, and it's a really emotional thing for that resident to lose that deposit. It can actually sour a relationship. And so we decided that it wasn't the right move. And that was also in conjunction with our long-term outlook, right? And so the idea of earning more from the option deposit means less to me because I see the downside of it and hurting a really great resident relationship. Putting it another way, that resident could have stayed 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years with me. And, it was tough when they had an option deposit they lost because they couldn't get qualified. So there's a downside to that. And then Bill's other question is, does it increase the responsibility of the owner? You can work with a great property management company who can make sure that your residents are treating your home well, right? Treating it to the standard that they should. Now, this doesn't mean that your home is always going to be, there's not going to be any issues with it. There are always going to be issues when tenants move out, but you shouldn't need the lever of having an option deposit to encourage that, right? You can encourage that through the way that you manage that relationship anyway. So you won't find lease to own as an option here at JWB for all those reasons combined. Great question, Bill. All right, we've got more questions firing up here. I appreciate all of you guys jumping in here, and I'll stay here just as long as you guys have some questions here. So next one up is John. John from this weekend at the Spike Ball tournament. John says, Mr. Cohen, where do you recommend that I put my money into? Do you recommend that I should put more into my emergency funds or save for the 20% down? And then he asked, were you nervous when you took out the loan that you may not have been able to pay your dad back? All right, so the first question, where do you recommend that you put your money into? And then I really love your follow-up question, which is, should you put it into your emergency funds or save for 20% down on your first rental property? Your emergency funds help you sleep well at night. They help me sleep well at night. I find it very hard to make really strong, sound decisions if I don't have a safety net, right? You're just not going to be at the top of your game. And depending on the responsibilities that you have to take into account the other people that are depending on you. So I always think that you should have your emergency safety net set up before you start investing. Now, what is an emergency safety net? Well, to me, and for what most financial professionals would recommend, is somewhere between 3 to 6 months of savings. So what your expenses are, multiply that on a monthly basis times 3 or 6. Or if you want to get even more conservative, maybe go out longer. Maybe this is COVID time and it's affecting you in a different way. Maybe that should be 9 months or 12 months, right? That'll be a personal decision, but you want to tie it to what your run rate is as you as a business, right? That's your monthly expenses times 3 or times 6. If you're not there yet, get there first and then start to put your money into investments. And oh, by the way, while you're getting there, make sure you're paying attention to shows like this and learning, educating yourself so that when you do get there to that 6-month mark, you're ready to rock and roll, John. And then he asked, was I nervous about when I took the loan out that I may not have been able to pay my dad back? Absolutely. I was so scared. Everything I did in the beginning was incredibly nerve-wracking. I mean, I saw the amount of money that I had to borrow, and I said to myself, I've never made that much money in a year. And I had to borrow that. I think it was probably $25,000 or $30,000 that I had to borrow to do the first property that I had to borrow from my dad. And, when you're a young kid, it's scary. So yeah, absolutely. I was scared. But what made me feel better is that I had educated myself. I had surrounded myself with mentors. I walked through the deal with them ahead of time. I looked at the numbers. I studied them. The numbers made sense. So all of these things helped me get over the hump, and that'll help you too, John. Lee Bishop asked, Greg, how about this? You're investing in 4 areas around Jacksonville. Is there any other area you may be willing to get into in the near future so that you're not saturating those 4 areas? That's a great question. So, we have to start with what is best for our investors and our model first. It does not matter as far as if we're saturating the market or if there's more opportunity or less opportunity, if we're not doing right by our clients. And so for the last 15 years, our neighborhoods have largely been the same in Jacksonville, right? We may go one street over a little bit farther than we did maybe 15 years ago because we have more experience today than we did when I was a 23-year-old, snot-nosed little kid trying to figure this out. So maybe slight little tweaks, but we haven't changed what we do. And it's because these neighborhoods are the right neighborhoods in Jacksonville. Now, what most investors, most turnkey companies, the problem that they face is that when they identify those 4 neighborhoods in their area and they start to saturate it and they don't have enough inventory, they have to go and find other neighborhoods. They have to bend the rules. They have to maybe go outside their market. They have to go to that's why you'll hear a lot of other turnkey providers saying, oh, we're opening up a market in Sheboygan. We're opening a market here, we're opening a market there. It's because they don't have the opportunity to create their own inventory. Well, JWB saw this a long time ago. And that's why we got so strong into brand new construction. We knew that there would be inventory challenges and that there would be a shortage of inventory now. And so that's why since 2011, we've been buying land so that we could create our own inventory in our neighborhood. So, short answer to you, Lee, is we're not going to deviate from what is best for clients. We're not going to go into low income neighborhoods, even though the numbers might look good. We're not going to go into high income neighborhoods because you won't get cash flow. And we are looking at it with a little bit of a different approach. We've understood how we can acquire land and stockpile it for future years. And then we're able to basically control the inventory for our clients and create inventory in neighborhoods so that we're not saturated. It's just a little bit of a different approach than what other turnkey providers may have. Excellent question. Vinay Rogers, nice to hear from you, Vinay. He said, what about financial strategies? How does one get around loans when one is furloughed? What about a 401k? Is it a good idea to pull and pay off or leverage for more properties? Wow, that's a lot of questions there. So what about financial strategies? How does one get around loans when one is furloughed? All right. That's a tough one, Vinay. There's always a way to be able to raise money, to be able to purchase a property. But I love your ability to get conventional loans right now, right? Like I could teach you how to raise money. You'd have to pay a lot more than 4% to borrow it. You could do that, but then you'd run into some potential cash flow issues. I don't want you buying a rental property that doesn't have positive cash flow. So there's ways to do that, but I wouldn't put too much time and energy into that. I would start to take a look at, this ability to get conventionally financed. And, if the furlough is a short amount of time, then, maybe we wait until that ability for you to get conventionally financed makes sense. Another thing is, just like I shared the story of the first property I purchased, where I got conventional financing, my dad gave me the loan, and then that's how I bought the property and I paid him back later on. Well, let's just say that it was the opposite. Let's say you had the money, but you can't get the financing at the moment. Do you think that you could find somebody else out there who wanted to partner with you to be able to purchase the property, and you guys might be able to co-own the property? Answer is of course, right? The ability to get financing is a value, and the ability to have the money is a value. It's got to all come together to get the property purchased. So that might be somebody, in your family, right? A spouse, of course, is one we would look at. A brother, a sister, a parent, right? Those are all potential opportunities to partner up and to build your rental property portfolio. But you might have other friends, colleagues, neighbors who are interested in your success. I would just encourage you to share what you're up to and bring people into your bubble, into your atmosphere. And, if you really do want to move forward and a furlough might take a long time, you might want to look at partnering up, and you bring the down payment and somebody else brings the financing, and you can kind of make this a team sport. All right, everybody, we've got probably about 5 minutes or so. And I can see we've got a number of questions here. I'm going to start to make my way through, and I would just encourage any of you, if you have additional questions, fire them in now. And for any of those that I can't answer live here, I'm going to make sure that I answer them in the group a little bit later. Roger Evans asks, does purchasing multiple rental properties in 1 year drop your credit rating? It's a great question. So what happens is, when you pull your credit to go and get a loan, that knocks your credit score down. The reason credit card company, or the reason that credit agencies put this in place, is so that you don't go and, get a tremendous amount of credit all at one time and then just book it and leave to Mexico. So they needed to have some mechanism to show that if you recently applied for credit, it would ding your credit. But it is generally a temporary ding. This is known to be the general rule. Is it lasts for about 30 days. And if you have multiple credit inquiries for, say, getting a loan for a mortgage, it is not supposed to ding you every single time for that specific mortgage, right? So now if you're going and you're getting credit here for this credit card, and then you're getting this for a mortgage and this for something else, that will lower your credit score. If you're just getting it for a mortgage, no matter how many credit pulls you have just for that mortgage, it's not supposed to ding your credit score anymore. And then just know that it is going to rise again. After that 30-day window is generally what the thought is. The challenge is that what I'm sharing with you is all what we're told. Who knows what the credit agencies do? So if it doesn't last exactly 30 days, don't come back to me. That's just what we expect from what we hear about them. But it should not be a 1 year drop, and it should not hurt you to buy multiple rental properties in the same year. Great question, Roger. Medj Garcia, current client of ours. Medj, thank you for being here. She says, can I purchase a property under my LLC at the very start? Yes, absolutely. You can purchase a property under your LLC at the very start. Typically, this is more common when folks are buying properties in their retirement accounts. And the reason is, when you buy a property in an LLC, you typically cannot get conventional financing in your personal name, right? So banks are very particular, and they only want to lend to you as an individual. So when you're buying in your retirement account, you're not getting conventional financing anyways. So generally, we will see people start out by buying properties in their LLC if it's for a retirement account purchase. Now, to add to that, if you do want to have your properties end up in an LLC, you can purchase them in your personal name. You can get the conventional financing, and there are strategies to have those converted to an LLC. Get somewhat complex. So for anybody who has that question, and Medj, what I would encourage you to do is to reach out to your portfolio manager here at JWB. We're happy to walk you through that process and make it easy for you. And for those who haven't come on board yet, or who aren't clients yet, I would encourage you to set up a time to speak with my team by going to chatwithjwb.com. All right, we're going to round it out here in 4 minutes. I might go a little rapid fire with some of the questions here. Nancy Wise says, how much down and closing costs do you need utilizing an IRA to purchase a property? It's a great question. So simple answer here is I would recommend at a minimum about $70,000 if you're looking to buy a property in your retirement account using non-recourse financing. Okay. Non-recourse financing requires 50% down, 50. It requires more down because it's a completely different type of loan out there. And so when you think about 50% down, plus we need to make sure you have enough reserves in place for a rainy day in your retirement accounts. If you don't have at least 70,000, you probably shouldn't be buying property in your retirement accounts. I would go a little bit farther too, and just, I want to make sure that people are prepared for that rainy day in their retirement accounts. So when you're thinking about buying your first rental property in your retirement accounts, talk to my team. We want to make sure we have a good plan in place. Sometimes it might make sense to wait until you get even more of a buffer, depending on your situation with your retirement accounts, what other assets you have in there. So we're going to work through that with you, build a plan. But at a minimum, if you don't have at least 70, I would say you're probably not ready to buy in your retirement account. What would make a great thing if you have less than 70? Start with private lending. And that's something that we do here at JWB. Private lending is when you become the bank and you make a loan to a real estate developer like JWB, and we use those funds and we pay you a 10% interest rate to use those funds. All right. Let's see here. Zach Curray, another current client. Aloha, Greg. How relevant is appreciation rate with decision on markets to invest in rental properties? Good to see JWB is including appreciation rate in their property valuation spreadsheet. And this is a great question to probably end with today. Zach, you teed me up. This is actually the teaching point that I was going to kind of walk into today. So home price appreciation for most investors, they don't count it. And I understand it because they say, well, you know what? I went through the Great Recession. I see market values can go up and down, and I don't want to think about it. I want to make my decision just solely based on the cash flows. And I understand where they're coming from, but what I want to share with people is if you don't look at home price appreciation and you plan to hold on for the long haul and you plan to buy a substantial portfolio of rental properties like Zach has, you're missing a huge component of your overall return on investment, and you're missing a huge component of what's going to help you achieve your financial goals. So here's what I mean, right? I just did a walk and talk in our Facebook group yesterday, and I compared investing in Cleveland with investing in Jacksonville. Now, in Cleveland, the annualized home price appreciation rate is 2.3% per year on average since 1991. In Jacksonville since 1991, the annualized average appreciation rate is 4.3%. So almost double in Jacksonville what you would get in Cleveland. And here's why this matters. If you looked at what your overall portfolio would look like if you bought one house in Cleveland in 1991 for $100,000, I don't have the numbers in front of me. It's going to be worth about $180,000 in 2020, in the year 2020. If you bought that same $100,000 property in Jacksonville in 1991, that's going to be worth around $320,000 in 2020. 180 in Cleveland today versus 320 in Jacksonville. That's $140,000 of additional return by choosing the right market. And what I tell people is that this is not guessing. When you look at the numbers, you look at the historical appreciation rates, what most people don't understand is that when you invest for a full market cycle, appreciation tends to repeat itself. If you look back from the last 10 years to 20 years on any market cycle here in Jacksonville, you're going to see that home price appreciation is right around 4% or a little bit above, right? Even if I go to the Great Recession and I see where market values dropped from 2008 to 2011, they dropped 35% there. But I go out for the full market cycle. I go from 2001 to 2020. Would you believe that the average annualized home price appreciation rate in Jacksonville is just about 4%? So things come back to the norm. If you're investing for the long haul, you must be paying attention to property appreciation, because if you don't, you're going to be leaving a lot of money on the table. And think about that scenario where you bought that one property for $100,000 in Cleveland. but you are like many of our clients and you want to buy 3 or 5 or 10, right? If you have a 10 property portfolio in Cleveland with what I just shared versus a 10 property portfolio in Jacksonville that was purchased in 1991, that's over $1 million of additional return on investment for your properties in Jacksonville versus Cleveland. So it is incredibly important to pay attention to home price appreciation rate. I will qualify this though. The number one rule for investing in rental properties is positive cash flow. Once you find a market where you can get positive cash flow, now you've met that standard, then you need to look at the other profit centers, like home price appreciation, like tax savings, like principal pay down. Don't be like those investors out there that just get so infatuated with the absolute maximum positive cash flow because they're leaving a lot of money on the table if they plan to invest for a full market cycle. Zach, thanks so much for the question. All right, everybody here. I've really appreciated you all helping me help you. Obviously, that was not the plan here for today's call, but I see we've got our friend here. You're back, man.
Buddy, just coming in to tell you did a great job. I didn't want to ruin you while you were going, man. You did an amazing job. You moderated there. I couldn't get into the chat. I was just telling people to put the chat into the Q&A and try to help you that way, but you did it all, man. How did you keep track of it all?
I just, have you seen like Will Ferrell in that movie in was it Old School, where he gave this incredible dissertation?
I just blacked out.
And he just blacked out. I just blacked out. I'm back. I don't know.
You did amazing, man. You did amazing. Great job. Guys, thank you. Thank you so many people for sticking around. Thank you for populating the Q&A. I thought everybody really chipped in here to make it a great call, especially you, Gregg, handling all the variables. On Thursday, if you'll join us, I promise you that we're going to have great reception and we're going to go over the property of the week. You're going to do the echo?
Week.
We're going to do the property of the week. Come back. We always have great questions and answers. We'll have Jen and Renee on again sometime soon because their story really is fantastic. Gregg, I want to applaud you for doing this. I want to really thank everybody for sticking through us for the technical difficulties with my mouth, technical difficulties that we had. That's it. I want to encourage everybody to go to jwbwebclass.com, get that free investor kit, especially if you're going to join us on Thursday. You're going to have the spreadsheet that we're going to be tinkering with. So you see how we can mess with all the property values and answer your questions, and join us in the Facebook group. And thanks for spending Tuesday with us, Gregg. I'll leave it up to you, buddy. You did amazing, man. Like you really,
Well,
you really
you
did.
I mean, this is another step forward for our group. I mean, to have this type of interaction, it tells me that you guys really have some incredible questions. And, Pablo and myself and Jen, we're resources for you. Jen will be here the next time around. But we just really get fired up to answer your questions. So thank you guys for making it easy on me, and we'll catch you on Thursday.
See you, everybody.
See you.